Hogan's Heroes, an enduring gem in television history, blended comedy with the grim realities of war. Behind the scenes, there were intriguing secrets that added depth to this dichotomy. From hidden meanings in the theme songs to blown-up sets, the producers kept a lot going on in the background.
He makes marvelous strudel. Oh, shut up. Fire!
Now, all these behind-the-scenes details are coming to light. From Bernard's dual roles to an early offensive tagline, join us as we show you 15 secrets about Hogan's Heroes. Number 15. Barbed wire and high heels. Hogan's Heroes, the classic 1960s sitcom following a group of Allied prisoners in a German prisoner of war camp, was a major hit in America and Britain during its original run from 1965 to 1971. However, the show did not air in Germany itself until over 2 decades later in 1992, when it was introduced under the title Barbed Wire and High Heels. Facing a delay of 25 years after its initial popularity elsewhere, Hogan's Heroes finally reached German audiences, but only after some major adaptations. The most obvious change was the title itself. Barbed Wire and High Heels highlighted elements of discomfort and absurdity, seemingly poking fun at the show's premise of prisoners outwitting their Nazi captors. Beyond the name change, Hogan's Heroes required localization to align with German sensitivities around portrayals of Nazism and World War II history. The show's comedic tone resonated with international viewers years earlier, but more care was necessitated for its German release. Through creative dubbing, the Nazi characters like Sergeant Schultz and Colonel Clink adopted thicker rural accents, undercutting their roles as intimidating villains. Their foolishness was emphasized in the German translation, relegating them to purely comedic figures lacking menace or historical baggage. Additionally, Colonel Clink received a previously unseen love interest named Kalinka to further humanize and soften him. Other sensitive plot lines involving German wartime operations were outright excluded. This cautious reshaping of Hogan's Heroes into a harmless farce succeeded in making the show palatable and even popular with German audiences by 1992. Its journey reflected the country's long road to reconciling difficult history with the necessity of understanding and respect. By stylizing the Axis characters and eliminating sensitive themes, the sitcom was able to transition into a light comedy set during wartime rather than a source of painful recollection. For those involved, like Jewish lead actor Werner Klemperer, who lost his family in the Holocaust, permitting such creative adaptation for comedic and cathartic effect points to a deep well of forgiveness and compassion. Number 14. Reality turned fiction. The Nazis on Hogan's Heroes were played by actual Jews. Talk about ironic casting. Several prominent cast members had fled real Nazi persecution in Europe, while others had family who suffered under anti-Semitic oppression. This lent a deeply personal and cathartic dimension to their satirical performances as bumbling Nazis outwitted by the show's heroes. Every time Colonel gets hoodwinked, you're watching Jewish actors revel in some symbolic payback against the oppressors their kinsmen narrowly escaped. Their real backgrounds gave the slapstick Nazi roles a powerful, subversive edge. Most prominent was Colonel Wilhelm Clink actor Werner Klemperer, whose father Otto fled Hitler's regime to America during its alarming early stages after facing professional restrictions in 1930s Germany due to Jewish lineage. Klemperer's family witnessed the Holocaust's terrors firsthand, which he brought solemn awareness of while embodying the blustering Clink. By inhabiting a flawed authority figure seemingly loyal to evil systems, Klemperer saw his role as conveying tyranny's inherent weaknesses, using wit and humor as weapons for reclaiming dignity. His insistence that any Nazi depictions must remain completely unflattering and foolish indicated deep sensitivities fostering that performance dynamic. Similarly, Sergeant Schultz actor John Banner utilized his incarceration surviving Nazi persecution to inform patterns of denial and avoidance in the bumbling character. Other Jewish émigrés, Howard Kane and Robert Clary, as a camp survivor, played Germans with equally intricate subtext. The show thereby transformed reality into defiant fiction, helping its comedy cut profound ways by tapping into profound personal insights none would wish to repeat, but which these actors corralled to touch millions. Number 13. The failed spin-off movie. Fresh off Hogan's Heroes sitcom success in 1967, producers sought to capitalize on the popular ensemble cast through a spy comedy film, SpinOff. Titled The Wicked Dreams of Paula Schultz, it reunited key actors including Bob Crane as an American smuggler in Cold War Europe, attempting to rescue an Olympic hopeful pole vaulter from East Germany. The movie attempted to carry over comedic elements, with former Hogan's Heroes actors essentially playing similar charming rogue characters. Paula Schultz also featured cameos from the sitcom's German officers like Klemperer and Banner, implying links between the film and the show. However, despite the winning formula on television, the cinematic result fell severely flat, lacking the same charisma. Audiences in 1968 struggled to connect with the thinly plotted Paula Schultz, unable to capture the intrigue and chemistry of the Hogan's Heroes ensembles. Ultimately, the failure highlighted intrinsic links between the original sitcom's setting and character dynamics that could not simply be reproduced outside the unique prisoners of war camp environment. Paula Schultz later gained some notoriety as an early career oddity of the Hogan's Heroes cast. It pointed towards the difficulty of spinning episodic television success into sustainable film franchises beyond a single breakout platform. While the movie itself languished in obscurity after poor critical and commercial reception, its very existence shed light on attempted crossovers that never found sure footing. Decades later, an intriguing film footnote also surfaced tying the wicked dreams of Paula Schultz to Quentin Tarantino's Kill Bill saga. The name Paula Schultz appears on Beatrix Kiddo's grave in Kill Bill Volume 2, paying direct homage to the forgotten spy comedy flop featuring Hogan's Heroes Alum Crane decades earlier. Number 12. Schultz's iconic catchphrase. Sergeant Schultz, the bumbling and insecure yet oddly sympathetic German guard, holds a special place in the hearts of Hogan's Heroes fans. This endearing character is cherished, in part, for his iconic catchphrase that perfectly captures his harmless incompetence. Whenever confronted by evident prisoner antics, Schultz would throw his hands up proclaiming, "I know nothing, nothing," feigning ignorance to avoid confronting problems. The memorable line emerged spontaneously from actor John Banner, rather than as written dialogue. But it perfectly crystallized Schultz's preferred survival mechanism when surrounded by uncomfortable realities he felt unable to control as a low-ranked guard: willful blindness. By insisting he lacked any knowledge of violations happening around him, Schultz justified inaction. His signature phrase added levity through repetition in increasingly absurd scenarios, but underneath lay poignant notes about human nature. Schultz's denial reflected wartime Germany's societal complicity in ignoring oppression and injustice, until dire outcomes were unavoidable. It highlighted diffused responsibility when ordinary citizens value personal safety over challenging institutional roles, enabling authoritarian regimes. "I know nothing, nothing," also encapsulated Schultz's sympathetic qualities despite Axis identification. His complicit do-nothing stance came less from malice than powerlessness and fear, much like civilians under zealous dictatorships. As such, his ineptitude commanded both laughter and empathy, a unique complexity attributable to his memorable improvised one-liner. Number 11. The set was literally blown up. The elaborate set constructing the fictional Stalag 13 in Hogan's Heroes became an iconic backdrop recognized globally during the show's hit 1960s run. But after 6 seasons wrapping in 1971, the detailed physical set no longer served a purpose for CBS. However, the old set was granted an explosive second life in one of the most shocking instances of TV set recycling. Rather than face a hefty bill for having the Hogan's Heroes set dismantled, the production company made an unorthodox agreement allowing it to be reused. The low-budget 1974 exploitation film Ilsa, She-Wolf of the SS, known for its scandalous content, was set to showcase a climactic finale needing a Nazi camp location. The producers discovered the vacant Stalag 13 set and negotiated to use it against the backdrop of the salacious Ilsa script. In a darkly ironic twist, the set, decorated with nostalgia and laughs for family audiences, would host graphic adult scenes filled with torture, drama, and characteristics boundary-pushing content. The agreement gave the production team permission to destroy the set through a dramatic, fiery explosion in Ilsa's conclusion, sparing CBS demolition costs. Watching the iconic set blown sky-high in an envelope-pushing theatrical film shocked Hogan's Heroes fans. But it forced uncomfortable questions about laughing at sanitized prisoner-of-war portrayals while turning a blind eye to wartime atrocities haunting history. The show's creators maintained the Stalag 13 was consciously crafted not to resemble concentration camps associated with the Holocaust, but its exploitative film successor directly mined scenarios and settings bearing painful resemblance to reality. The destruction of the playful Hogan's Heroes set in such a grim film seemed alarmingly symbolic, like war itself, failing to distinguish between the light and the grave. Ultimately, the twist reflects the complex interplay between comedy and tragedy against the backdrop of World War II's long shadow. Number 10. Clink the Classical Musician. Colonel Wilhelm Clink, the bumbling and easily flustered commandant of Stalag 13 in Hogan's Heroes, frequently showcased untapped talents as an accordion player and violinist, or so he believed. Among the show's most amusing running gags was Clink's insistence that he was a gifted musician who regaled prisoners with epic compositions when reality suggested the opposite. Guest characters would suffer through his screechy fiddling or slip away, making excuses. His musical ineptitude mirrored his overrated authority as Stalag 13's leader. But ironically, the actor behind Clink was in real life an accomplished classical violinist and pianist. Werner Klemperer came from an acclaimed musical lineage as the son of orchestral conductor Otto Klemperer. Though he earned fame as the befuddled Colonel Clink, Klemperer first established himself as a talented violist in the classical realm long before acting dominance. The running joke of Clink's lack of skill therefore added an extra layer for those aware of Klemperer's professional musical prowess. Seeing him posture arrogantly with the violin in character, while knowing his genuine talent, made the act even more hilarious. It underscored how fully Klemperer could inhabit his bumbling Clink identity. Konrad Klemperer, Werner's son, reflected that his father was a much better violin player than Colonel Clink. He was asked not to play too well, otherwise no one would believe his character. Klemperer leaned into Clink's mediocrity for comedic effect, while hoodwinking audiences unaware of his capabilities. Occasional moments revealed Klemperer's true expertise, however. In one episode, after swapping with a visiting Russian officer also claiming musical skill, Klemperer breaks briefly out of character, astounding the audience with an authentic violin solo before snapping back into Clink's persona, fully delighting viewers. Number 9. Bernard Fox's dual roles. Among Hogan's Heroes' versatile ensemble cast was British character actor Bernard Fox, who brought to life not one but two memorable German officers. Showcasing the impressive range, Fox played both the bumbling Colonel Rodney Crittenden as well as General Albert Burkhalter's aristocratic brother, creating delightful confusion. Crittenden appeared sporadically as an incompetent visiting officer, hatching far-fetched escape schemes that comically backfired. Fox leaned into broad physical comedy while exhibiting Crittenden's oblivious optimism. By contrast, his portrayal of General Burkhalter's brother exuded pompous privilege and entitled authority. Fox adeptly managed both character types without blurring their distinctive traits. This notable feat was partly facilitated by their limited direct interactions, but it enabled lively narrative dynamics, having Fox shift between comedy and drama fluidly. Producers may have partly chosen the dual role approach for efficiency combined with added humor, but it ultimately worked thanks to Fox's acting caliber. Seeing him inhabit two separate German officers plausibly created delight for viewers through the absurdity. Fox brought charisma and theatrical gusto to both roles. While the hapless Crittenden was a source of laughs, Fox's Burkhalter sibling added intriguing tension. He kept key protagonists like Hogan and his band of prisoners of war resistors on high alert through his family affiliations. Fox's flexibility, showcased by these polar opposite officers, highlighted his artistic range, fitting snugly into Hogan's hero's multifaceted ensemble energy. Number 8. Deliberate mistakes. Attentive Hogan's Heroes fans likely observed occasional anachronisms like modern props contrasting its World War II setting. Brief glimpses of historically inaccurate details included items such as a wristwatch or cigarette lighter design years ahead of their time. However, the show creators planted these subtle mistakes very deliberately. Rather than oversights or production errors that slipped through unnoticed, the factual discrepancies scattered as Easter eggs were intentional creative choices. They offered winks to eagle-eyed fans able to spot details out of temporal context. Wind-up alarm clocks appearing decades early or wrong civilian clothing fashions in the background added to the series' playful spirit, celebrating its creativity. Show producer Bob Crane explained that inserting deliberate continuity quirks or chronological hiccups was meant to acknowledge the limitations of recreating wartime history entirely accurately on a television budget. It served as a reminder that Hogan's Heroes, for all its intrigues blending captivity hardship with espionage excitement, remained focused on entertainment first as fiction, rather than a documentary. By gifting attentive fans inside references celebrating the show's function as a comedy sitcom, Hogan's Heroes embraced its core identity. Scattered deliberate factual errors kept the show grounded in escapist appeal over bleak realism. Allowing the fabric of history to unravel ever so slightly conveyed that however seriously characters confronted mortal stakes, embracing lightheartedness together was always Hogan Heroes' heroic credo. Number 7. The secret song lyrics. The rousing martial theme music opening Hogan's Heroes grew ubiquitous for its emphatic rhythm and trumpet lead line. However, few fans realized the instrumental composition had accompanying lyrics specially authored by the show's creators. Though never officially recorded or featured on air, the secret words reveal compelling insight into the show's vision of valor. Penned by producer-writer Bernard Fine, the lyrics have a bold, patriotic tone suiting the premise of Allied prisoner heroes staging resistance. After an opening line celebrating husky men of war, sons of heroes gone before, subsequent verses elaborate on attributes like courage, loyalty, and sacrifice which the ensemble cast embodied. With lines like, "Here's to the heroes brave and bold, laughing at danger, swaggering with pride," the lyricist envisions stalwart, audacious spirits confronting adversity with almost swashbuckling theatricality. The theme of honor continues through a chorus of, "All good heroes love a great big fight. Open up the bomb bay doors and blaze through the night." The climactic crescendo offers a heroic call to action and creed. "Ask not why, brave boys, never say die, boys. Answer the call. We'll be heroes one and all." This surprise anthem has a propulsive, cheerleading tone in line with the show's gamified take on the dire stakes of World War II military captivity. It romanticizes the key character's unwavering fight against Axis oppression. While the instrumental opening sequence was already etched in pop culture, revealing the existence of an unused song gives special insight. The world of Hogan's Heroes had unseen dimensions where courage and sacrifice were hymned with musical passion. The secret lyrics offer a glimpse behind the scenes, illuminating the show's vision of valor and enemy defiance through the spirit of creative joy and camaraderie from the ensemble performers themselves. Number 6. The wartime comedy album. Capitalizing on enthusiasm for the sitcom in the late 1960s, a peculiar musical album united core Hogan's Heroes actors to croon classics of World War II vintage. Playfully titled Hogan's Heroes Sing the Best of World War II, the record compiled best-known warmongering-era hits performed with comedic overtones by cast members mimicking their sitcom personas. Robert Clary, Richard Dawson, Ivan Dixon, and Larry Hovis comprised the Singing Heroes Quartet, applying their vocals to standards like the Beer Barrel Polka, alongside the original composition Heroes, Heroes. Back cover liner notes set the absurd tone, reading, "Would you believe World War II was funny?" The gag record sleeve also described prisoners allied against Nazi captors as lovable. While unconventional, the album aligned with the show's premise wartime hardship could prove fertile ground for building camaraderie, an uplifting spirit through shared music and laughter. Though the comedy album could have severely misfired in tone, there were careful considerations around its production. Series regular Robert Clary consulted concentration camp survivors on the theme, with approval granted based on differentiating between prisoner of war camps and genocidal facilities. While viewed as a curiosity today, Hogan's Heroes Sing the Best of World War II pointed to creative risks the show embraced, expanding its comedy bent within a war backdrop. Capitalizing on the premise required walking a tonal tightrope. But the album suggested that just as music uplifted spirits amidst conflict, balanced humor equally had redeeming qualities when anchored to human stories. Now it's time for today's subscriber pick. Huge Hogan's Heroes secrets finally revealed, fans are speechless. Hogan's Heroes brought convincing authority to its dramatization of World War II captivity scenarios through lead performers whose real lives intertwined with military service histories. Most prominently, series headliner Bob Crane's time as a U.S. Army disc jockey over Voice of America airwaves lent authentic touches to his portrayal of Colonel Hogan, the wisecracking Allied detainee outmaneuvering German foes. Similarly, Richard Dawson, who played fast-talking RAF Corporal Peter Newkirk, honed his skills as a GI performing skits to boost troop morale before civilian acting success. Their intuitive grasp of proper military conduct from first-hand experience adeptly bolstered the show's balance between comic escapism and credible scenarios faithful to wartime sacrifices. Subtly blending their genuine uniformed pasts into acting choices enabled Crane and Dawson to potentially resonate more intensely with numerous audience members sharing similar callings. Hogan's Heroes thereby channeled profound respect for those whose lives fatefully collided with global combat, even while conjuring thrills and laughter from a bubble of relative safety. Simultaneously, Colonel Clink's frequently donned officer's hat styled after World War I German military fashions, rather than appropriate World War II protocols, made for an ironic metaphor about his obliviousness towards proper procedures, despite pretensions. While focused on polished appearances, he remained lax on substance, like keeping updated alongside policies. The dated hat hence offered a subtle comic metaphor for Clink's feeble leadership, lagging woefully behind despite pretending otherwise through empty, punctilious gestures. Through clever wardrobe choices, his leadership disconnect was literally visible atop Clink's hapless head. What is your favorite moment from Hogan's Heroes? Let us know in the comments below. Number 5. Early slogan. Hogan's Heroes courted controversy before its first episode even aired through an early slogan perceived as tasteless and offensive, considering its wartime subject matter. In a 1965 interview, creator Bob Crane awkwardly referenced the tagline, "If you liked World War II, you'll love Hogan's Heroes," initially proposed by filmmaker Mel Brooks. The phrase intended to convey the show's unconventional situating of comedy against the deadliest global military conflict in history through prisoners covertly undermining Nazi captors. But its flippant tone, trivializing enormous loss of life for entertainment value, drew instant reproach from television executives and the public. Crane himself immediately condemned the slogan's irreverent implications after the awkward interview interaction put it in the headlines. Despite being attributed to Hogan's Heroes for years hence, even occasionally used in syndication packaging, the shock value phrase conveyed inaccurate, insensitive associations, given Crane's serious intentions, balancing humor with the sobering wartime backdrop. The early branding stumble contained lessons about comedy limitations surrounding grave themes associated with deep cultural wounds. While Hogan's Heroes succeeded on its own merits later by walking that line with earnestness towards the subject matter, the callous slogan conflicted with those efforts. Recognizing eternal remembrance supersedes diversionary laughter. Though merely an interview aside that inadvertently exploded, the original shocking catchphrase highlighted comedy pitfalls tied to cavalierly marketed history's darkest moments. Its controversy compelled a more conscientious framing of the show's delicate premise still himself. Ultimately, Hogan's Heroes earned its place diffusing tension around captive scenarios while allowing space for rightful solemnity. Number 4. The Unseen Cigar. Colonel Wilhelm Clink, the incompetent commandant of Luftstalag 13 in Hogan's Heroes, frequently appeared on screen chomping a cigar while touting his authority. But curiously, for all his blustering, Clink was never shown lighting or smoking his ubiquitous trademark cigar. This odd, invisible accessory became a subtle yet hilarious running gag, highlighting aspects of his personality. Clink's unlit stogie illustrated his superficial posturing of power, tightly clinging to symbols like the cigar to mask deep insecurities about his abilities from superiors like General Burkhalter and detainees under his charge like Colonel Hogan. He understood appearances mattered greatly when reputation determined outcomes. The cigar also pointed towards Clink's unsavory hidden flaws and vices, kept concealed to maintain his strictly disciplined camp image. While restricting prisoners' privileges and skimming funds for himself, Clink puffed away on contraband cigars locked secretly in his desk. His closest confidant, Sergeant Schultz, knew of the stash but conspiratorially averted his eyes, letting Clink indulge in hypocrisy and hubris. Ultimately, Clink's trademark illusion of an ever-present cigar generated laughs through the absurdity of him constantly fiddling with an unlit, unused prop more than actually savoring tobacco pleasures. It exemplified his inflated self-perception, his nervous tendency towards distraction instead of command, and even his unconscious acknowledgement that the powerful persona he projected was pure smoke and mirrors. Number 3. Richard Dawson accent. Hogan's Heroes star Richard Dawson brought swaggering charisma to the role of Royal Air Force Corporal Peter Newkirk, but initially harbored ambitions of taking command himself as lead protagonist Colonel Hogan. During his audition process, Dawson attempted an American accent in hopes of headlining the ensemble, but his efforts landed wide of the mark, and producers suggested another role. Not abandoning his aspirations entirely, Dawson next tried out Newkirk, while embracing his British background more fully through a Liverpudlian Scouse dialect. But wary producers pushed back against that thick regional Northwest England accent, concerned American viewers would find it entirely unintelligible. Reluctantly, Dawson adopted a more familiar London Cockney speech pattern for Newkirk read as genially roguish. But he retained pride at nearly making World War II history as television's first Scouse colonel barking orders while masterminding elaborate prisoners of war hijinks and sabotage. Dawson likely felt some smug vindication just a year later when 4 Liverpudlian lads, named John, Paul, George, and Ringo, became U.S. pop culture sensations as the Beatles in 1964, bombarding radios with Scouse accents suddenly in high demand. While Hogan remained the American top gun in Stalag 13, Dawson's near miss inserting Scouse's speech into primetime perhaps pointed towards a wave gathering momentum, an ocean away soon to sweep Liverpool flavor atop the entire transatlantic entertainment scene of the 1960s heyday. Number 2. The Rarest Car. General Albert Burkhalter, overseer visiting Colonel Clink's Stalag 13 base in Hogan's Heroes, arrived in an extraordinarily rare, luxurious staff car, highlighting his privileged status. His sleek black Mercedes-Benz G4 convertible, customized with partial cabriolet roof styling, reflected the lavish exclusivity granted to high-ranking Third Reich officers. However, Burkhalter revved around in no ordinary military-issue vehicle. His custom-built Mercedes tripled as a show-of-force propaganda display conveying Nazi authority and intimidation to any who beheld its elegant, imposing grille. Of the G4 series convertible, only 57 were constructed, making Burkhalter's Stallion among the rarest cars to ever appear in a television series. The handcrafted model carried an astronomical 1930s price tag equivalent to $250,000 today. Its custom coachwork exuded impractical extravagance, merely to satisfy officers' vanity. Accordingly, the villainous Burkhalter took smug pride cruising through camp gates in his roadster, knowing its awe-inspiring effect. But Hogan and his motley band relished puncturing that hubris whenever possible, staging occasional sabotage pranks, humiliating Burkhalter indirectly through cherished car sabotage. Precisely its rarity and status made the vehicle a prime target. The Mercedes served not only to demonstrate Burkhalter's pretentious power tripping in contrast to Clink's detained demotion, Its cameo roles slyly referenced Nazism's real propaganda dependency on outrageously showy displays weighed against undercurrents hinting at impending collapse. As such, Hogan's heroes aptly cast the G4 Roadster as an unwitting symbol of Axis narcissism, making its explosive on-screen destruction deliciously apartment. Number 1. From American Prison to Stalag 13. Huge Hogan's heroes' secrets finally revealed, fans are speechless. The show almost unfurled in a radically different setting before last-minute reworking just ahead of the pilot stage. Series creator Albert S. Ruddy originally envisioned the show based in an American jail before radically shifting the premise to a World War II German prisoners of war camp. Ruddy's initial concept focused on the relationship between a charismatic inmate ringleader, akin to eventual protagonist Colonel Robert Hogan, and a prison warden he could continually outmaneuver. But upon discovering rival network NBC was developing a show called Campo 44, centered on an Italian World War II prisoners of war camp, Ruddy hurriedly retooled his own show. Within a single day, the setting transformed into the Luftstalag 13 encampment run by Colonel Wilhelm Clink, with Hogan as an Allied detainee, covertly disrupting Nazi operations. While the interpersonal dynamics between the principal hero and nemesis remained, the historical context realigned the emotional stakes. The rapid change in backdrop proved a shrewd move distinguishing Ruddy's project from the competition. Without the looming shadow of Campo 44, which ultimately stalled in early planning, Hogan's Heroes defined itself through an inimitable scenario blending espionage, intrigue with comedic tension. The unique World War II framework gave the characters richer dimensionality while opening inventive plot directions inside the specialized confinement parameters befitting an acclaimed decade-long run. Rather than an incremental development, Hogan's Heroes owes its entire scenario launch to a single high-stakes creative decision, turning clashing inmate wills into detainees, scheming for liberation against megalomaniacal tyranny. Shifting that narrative arc to surroundings resonating deeper with American audiences, fresh off wartime trauma, allowed the show's humor and adventure to shine as a positive, cathartic outlet. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Next.